The Hutts were the undisputed overlords of one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy and the masters of the criminal underworld. This notoriously greedy and narcissistic species is one of Star Wars' most alien, with their only real resemblance to humans being their sentience and culture. Most Star Wars fans are familiar with the Hutts in general, but even some of the more devoted fans might have a few questions about these intriguing beings. What was their outlook on the universe? What was their culture like? How the hell did they reproduce? In this video, we'll be answering all those questions and more.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
The Hutts were essentially giant slugs. They didn't have skeletons, instead featuring a hardened mantle under their skins that maintained the approximate shape of their heads. Their skin was incredibly thick and constantly coated in sweat and mucus. Beneath it were thick layers of blubber and muscle. These qualities made Hutts incredibly tough, capable of shrugging off all sorts of damage. Their survival capabilities were improved by their resistance to most poisons and pathogens and their incredible regenerative abilities, which, for example, allowed them to regrow arms, eyes, and even parts of their brains. Hutts could also open their mouths wide enough to swallow humans whole, see in ultraviolet light, resist Jedi mind tricks, and survive underwater for hours at a time. Hutts grew ceaselessly over the course of their lives, which could last for over 1,000 years. All told, they were an incredibly resilient species. Hutts were hermaphroditic, which meant they had both male and female reproductive organs with no sexual distinction between Hutts. Sometimes, Hutts mated with each other, but most of the time they reproduced asexually, essentially mating with themselves. This may sound strange to us humans, but for the record, many real-world animals reproduce in the same way. Upon birth, Huttlets crawled into their parents' brood pouch where they would usually remain for decades. Huttlets weren't considered full Hutts until they reached 200 years of age. Prior to this, they weren't held responsible for their actions. Huttlets were often deliberately crushed by older Hutts to prevent competition, a practice that was apparently tolerated in Hutt society. The Hutts' hermaphroditism gave them a very fluid concept of gender. Hutts identified with genders based on the characteristics of their personalities. Jabba the Hutt, for example, identified as a male, while Gardulla the Hutt identified as female, though there were no physical differences between the two. Additionally, Hutts sometimes changed genders. Upon becoming pregnant, for example, many male Hutts chose to identify as female, though this wasn't always the case, as Jabba continued to identify as male after conceiving and giving birth to Rota. The Hutts had no sense of morality and only a vague concept of crime. Most of their laws were meant to keep their servants in line, and those few laws the Hutts subjected themselves to were mostly just codified traditions that made business more efficient. Not only did the Hutts have no qualms about murder, slavery, or exploitation, but most Hutts genuinely did not understand why most species looked down on such practices, viewing morality as a weakness. As a result, most Hutts were cruel and abusive, and their civilizations encouraged abominable behavior. With that said, there were good Hutts in the galaxy. Among them were Arba the Hutt, a Siniga-based business being who had a pronounced sense of mercy, and the unfortunately named Blotus the Hutt, who served as Supreme Chancellor of the Republic and was extremely popular in his day. The Hutts evolved on the planet Val, a world described in their legends as a tropical paradise lit by two suns. These suns, Ardos and Evona, were worshipped as gods by the Hutts, who developed a rich mythology centered around them and the stars they could see in the night sky. The Hutts were not the only sentients to evolve on Val. They shared the swampy world with the vaguely rhinoceros-like Tulander Til and, according to some records, the frog-like Rybets. But the Hutts were the most powerful natives of Val, as in those days, they were a mighty race of warriors. Val was conquered by the Rakata during the reign of the Infinite Empire, under which the Hutts acquired advanced space travel technology. During the slow decline of the Rakata, the Hutts rebelled under the leadership of a warlord named Adustag the Absolute, who freed Val from Rakatan rule. After the Rakata fled, the Hutts took to the stars. With reverse-engineered Rakatan hyperdrive technology, Adustag's followers carved out a place for themselves in the galaxy. Unfortunately for their galactic neighbors, they chose to follow in the Rakata's footsteps. The Hutts established an empire of their own and rapidly expanded into hundreds of star systems. For about 200 years, from the fall of the Infinite Empire in 25,200 BBY to the union of the Jedi Order and the Republic in 25,000 BBY, the Hutt Empire was the largest and most powerful civilization in the galaxy. In those days, the Hutts ran roughshod over countless worlds, enslaving some species and exterminating all others. Their greatest rivals in the immediate post-Rakatan period were the Taiwanese, who formed an empire under Zim the Despot before Cossack the Hutt defeated them. But before long, the Hutts found new rivals on the galactic stage, the Republic, which absorbed the Taiwanese and quickly became much more powerful than the Hutts. The Hutt Empire spent thousands of years fighting a proxy war on the galactic frontier with the Republic, raising frontier colonies and nearly provoking full-scale wars several times. This period of conflict came to a sudden end, however, when the Hutt Empire turned against itself. In 15,000 BBY, in a brutal series of civil wars called the Hutt Cataclysms, the Hutt Empire destroyed itself, rendering countless Hutt worlds desolate. Among the casualties of the Hutt Cataclysms was Varl. During the fighting, the star Idona was swallowed by a black hole, while Ardos went supernova, becoming a white dwarf and destroying every planet in the system aside from Varl. Varl was spared complete destruction, but its atmosphere was burned up and its surface was rendered barren and lifeless. This led to drastic changes in Hutt society. The Hutt Empire became the Hutt Cartel, which sought to dominate the galaxy through control of the galactic underworld, and the Hutt's clans stopped fighting open wars and began competing as business entities. As they relocated to a new homeworld, Ivokar, which they renamed Nal Hutta, the Hutts adopted a philosophy they called Kajidic, transitioning from a warrior race to the species of crime lords we're familiar with. The destruction of the Varl system caused another major shift in Hutt society, one with severe ramifications. With Ivona and Ardos destroyed, the Hutts believed their gods were dead, but by surviving their god's destruction, they reasoned that they themselves had become divine. Ever after, the Hutts expected members of other species to worship them, demanding respect at all times and unleashing terrible punishments on those who failed to demonstrate it. During the movie era, the Hutts still lived according to the Kajidic philosophy. Their clans were spread out across the galaxy, both in Hutt space and beyond its borders, getting involved in virtually every sort of business imaginable, legal or otherwise. The clans were ruled by the Hutt Council, composed of 5 Hutt leaders from the most powerful Kajidics. During the Clone Wars, these Hutt leaders were Jabba of the Deslegic clan, Gorja of the Deslegic clan, Arok of the Besadi clan, Aruba of the Gorensla clan, and Marlo of the Kunalak clan. The Deslegic clan was the most powerful, known for its hedonism and involvement in everything from the spice trade to slavery. They were also heavily into spice mining, with major stakes in operations on Kessel and Ryloth, though they were known for their willingness to get involved in anything that might turn a profit. The Deslegic shared their preferred fields with the Besadi, their bitter rivals. The Besadi ran even harsher slaving operations than the Deslegic, most notably on Ylesia, a major spice-producing world. The other 2 Clone Wars era ruling clans were a bit different. The Gorensla were primarily gun runners, shipping arms from their foundries on Sleheron to anyone with the credits to buy them. The Gorensla were masters of the black market and shadow politics, known for their unparalleled skill at buying up politicians and taking de facto control of entire planets. The Kunalak, on the other hand, were much more militaristic than the other ruling clans. Their illicit operations allowed them to purchase a vast fleet of warships, which they used to guard the Butana Hutta, the core territories of Hutt space. There were many other castes and Kajidics beyond those big 4, of course, some less reputable than others. The Hun caste, for example, were considered the lowest of the low among the Hutts, forced to the fringes of Hutt space where they lived in ignominy. And many petty Kajidics were little more than street gangs, small operations that rarely outlasted their founders. Those Hutts who failed to climb the Kajidic ladder were shown no mercy by the other members of their species. The Hutts believed in the survival of the fittest, and they didn't make exceptions, not even for their own. So that's our definitive look at the Hutts. But what do you think? Do you want more Hutt content? Feel free to post your thoughts in the comment section below, and as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.